Hello and welcome back to the Ghostroid development series. Today we'll be creating a spawn system that we'll be able to use to spawn the asteroids we made in the last video. Creating an entity spawner seems a little complex, but when you actually break it down, it turns out it's a really simple thing to do. Now we'll create this and kind of explain as we go, but to do this, first thing we're going to want to do is open up a new scene, and it's going to be of 2D scene. It doesn't actually need to be of 2D scene. It could be of normal node if it really wants to be, or pretty much anything. It could be a sprite. It doesn't really matter what it is. I'm just going to use Node 2D because that is the simplest thing to start with. Now we're going to rename this to the entity underscore spawner. Actually, we won't even put an underscore in there. There you go. We'll go entity spawn handler. No, entity spawn manager to really give ourselves a bit of view of what this is doing. The name itself will kind of, it's self-explanatory. This is a manager, which is going to be managing the spawning of entities. So we now have that. Let's go and hit Control S and save. Go into scenes. Under scenes here, we have our asteroids, handlers, level, main, and player. We'll create a new folder, and this one will be for the managers. So we'll create a new folder here for managers, and we'll save the entity spawn manager inside of that. I always use Control S or Command S to make sure I save afterwards. Just a weird habit. Now what we're going to do is attach a script to it. So let's think about what we're going to be needing to get this to function. Well, we're going to need access, right, to the thing we want to spawn, the place we want to spawn it at, the scene we want it to be a child of, so it can actually exist within our actual scene. And that's actually pretty much it, right? So if that's all we need, we only need those three things. First thing we're going to do here is we're going to go and grab a reference to the asteroid we want to spawn, right? So to do this, we're going to use an exported reference. So we'll go export var. We'll go large underscore asteroid underscore scene. And this will be of type packed scene. Now, why do we want a packed scene? Well, that's because we want to actually be able to kind of grab the scene that it's originally, that it's kind of packed into. Or in this case, we want to go through the file system here. We go into scenes, go into our asteroid, and we want to grab this thing specifically right here, this large asteroid.tscn that is a packed scene. We're going to want to unpack it and then instantiate it when we need to. So to get this as an export variable, we'll do var large asteroid scene colon packed scene, and then we'll set this equal to null. Now, setting this equal to null just means that this in the inspector here will be set to empty. So now we can go and load the actual scene we want to use. So I'm going to, once again, click the little drop down arrow, click load, go to scenes, asteroids, large asteroid scene. So this is now containing a reference to the large asteroid. We're going to rename this to large asteroid underscore packed scene. Like so. I know that's a bit long, but once again, it's really easy to at least visualize. You can look at that and go, I know exactly what that is. So what else are we going to need? Well, we're also going to be wanting a timer, right? We're going to want something to keep, randomly spawning these at certain intervals. So let's go and grab a timer. To do that, we're going to go into the entity spawn manager here. We're going to right click. We're going to hit add child, or you can use Control A or Command A. Now we can type in timer, grab the timer. This now has a timer. We're going to call this the asteroid spawn timer. This will be in charge of specifically spawning asteroids. Well, we'll probably have another one for UFOs when we get around to making those, but for now, the asteroid spawn timer will just be for the asteroids. Now we want to create an onReady variable for this. To do this, I'm going to create a few new lines just below extends and above our export. I'm going to left click drag, then I'm going to hold down Control or Command as I drop, and it will pre-create an onReady variable for us. Now, to make sure that we get IntelliSense and that the engine actually reads this as what it is immediately, I'm going to typecast this. To typecast, we're going to use the keyword as, and then we're going to typecast it as a timer. Once again, using this just makes the engine kind of understand that the asteroid spawn timer here that we are grabbing is actually a timer. Or at least that's what we want it to be. So we're using as a timer. And because it is a timer, it kind of functions correctly. Now you could do this as like a character body if you really wanted to, and you'd get IntelliSense for a character body, but we don't really want that. We're going to timer. So we've got our packed scene for our asteroid, and we've got a timer set up. What else are we going to want? Well, let's go and create an exported timer, or an exported variable again, and this will be for the maximum spawnable asteroid. So let's go maximum underscore spawnable underscore large underscore asteroids. This will be typed as an int, or it will be of type int, and we'll set it equal to, let's just do 2 for now. The reason why we want this kind of cap for the maximum is we don't want this to run every millisecond and spawn an infinite number of asteroids. That will get a bit problematic as we go. So we have our scene, or a packed scene, we have our cap, and we have our timer. Now what are we going to want? We're going to want somewhere to spawn or to store the current amount of asteroids, right? Now we could just increment a integer if we really wanted to, but we're not actually going to do that. We're going to use something a little bit more specific. We're going to create a variable. This is just a normal, privatized variable, or a variable that's just built into the script, non-exported. We're going to call this the asteroid underscore count underscore array. Now we're going to typecast this as an array, and we're going to open up the little square brackets as we're typecasting this, so we can make sure that we actually typecast the array to be of type large asteroid. So this is an array of large asteroids. Now, if you're not getting large asteroid pop up, make sure when you type this out, you go back to the largeasteroid.gd and you have the class name for it called large asteroid. That way, this can actually be an array of large asteroids. Now we're going to just set that equal to an empty array. So the reason why we're using an array is it's going to allow us to do a lot of very interesting modifications as certain things increase or decrease in the future. For now, we just want to make sure that this gets kind of incremented. And we will be modifying this kind of more as we go, especially as we move into health bars or the destruction of things and basically health of asteroids and things like that. So the final thing that we're going to want to do is create a boolean. We're going to call this one a var. It's going to be for can underscore spawn underscore asteroids of type bool, and we'll set it equal to true. So we want it to be able to spawn asteroids immediately, right? Now this is going to be toggled. So this is going to be the logic, right? This is going to be toggled true or false depending on if the asteroid array count, so how big this actual array is less than the maximum spawnable asteroids. So if this count here is the same as or more than, or equal to or more than the large asteroid count here, or the maximum spawnable large asteroids, it will stop spawning things or toggle this to false. Sorry if that's a little bit confusing, but as I kind of code through it, you'll probably start to understand it a little bit more. So we have our ready function here, and we have our physics process, or just our normal process, which is actually good. We don't need physics for this. We just need the normal process. What's the next thing we're going to want to do? Well, we're going to want to create a new function for just spawning the asteroid. So let's do that. Let's go func spawn underscore asteroid. It'll have no parentheses or no parameters, and it will be of type void or return type void. And now we're just going to do a really quick check. We're going to go if can spawn asteroid. So if can spawn asteroid is equal to true, that's kind of what this means. We can do this by going equals true to make sure we can kind of read this easily. So let's do that. If it is equal to true, we're going to want to actually go through the process of spawning our new asteroid. What is that process? Well, first we're going to want to grab or create a new asteroid. To do that, we can create a new variable, and this will be the new underscore asteroid. Asteroid. Yep, there we go. I'm spelling that correctly. We'll typecast it as a large asteroid, like so, and we'll set it equal to, or we'll typeset it to a large asteroid, and we'll set it equal to large asteroid pack scene dot instantiate. So this is a bit of a long line, but what this is basically doing is creating a new variable and unpacking the scene or instantiating the scene of the large asteroid. So we now have a brand new asteroid ready to go. Well, what do we want to do with that? Well, we want to start adding it into our main scene, right? We want to actually spawn it in and get it kind of floating around on the screen. So to do that, we're going to go and do something quite easy, I suppose. We're going to go to the main menu here, or the main scene that we have. We're going to click on our entity container. We're going to go over to node. We're going to go into groups, and we're going to give this a group. This will be of, the group for this will be the entity underscore container. Now, before I hit add or hit enter, I'm going to use Control Shift or Command Shift, and then the left arrow to copy the whole thing, and then Command C or Control C to make sure it's copied, and then hit add. So we now have this group container or group for the entity container. I'm going to hit Control S and save. What that's going to allow us to do is go back to the script for our entity spawn manager, and now we can actually go and find the entity container really easily with this, right? That's what it's going to do. It's going to allow us to find the entity container. So to do this, we're going to go var entity underscore container. This will be of type node 2D, and we'll set it equal to get underscore tree. So we're getting the current main tree, so we're getting this tree right here, and then we're going dot get first node in group. The entity container will only ever be it will only be the only node in the group at all times, right? So the only thing in the entity container group. Sorry, there we go. And what is the group that it's going to be in? Well, to define a group in here, we're going to hit Control V to copy, or Command V to paste, sorry. We're going to paste the entity container inside of here, highlight the whole thing, and then encase it or wrap it with some double quotes. What that's going to do is turn that into a string, and that is the group we are looking for. So we have now found our entity container. To do a triple check and make sure that we have found our entity container, we're going to go if entity container is equal to null, return. This is basically saying if the entity container doesn't actually exist, i.e. we haven't actually found this here, do nothing. We want this to return out of the spawn asteroid and do nothing else. That way we'll know if something's going wrong, because it won't actually spawn any asteroids at that point. So now what do we want to do? Well, now we actually just want to spawn the asteroid, right? To do that, we're going to grab the entity container that we've just created, or just found. We're going to use dot add child, and we're going to add the new asteroid to the entity container. This will actually instantiate it inside of the tree here and get it actually moving around on the screen. So with that done, we now want to add the new asteroid to the new array. Before we do that, I want to just go one step further and kind of make our array just a little bit more complicated, but a little bit more usable in the future. To do that, we're going to create a constant up here, just below our onReady. Actually, we'll do it here. Do it below our exports. That way we have all of our @ symbols up top, and then we can do an export here or a const here. So we'll go const, and this will be for the group that we want to create, because we're going to want to add our asteroids into a group. That way we can actually iterate over the whole group when we need to and check how many actually exist. That's going to be a bit more use for the future, but for now this is going to be kind of just a useful thing to set up. So we're going to go and call this asteroid underscore group in all caps. It will be of type string, and we're going to set this equal to asteroid, like so. So why am I using all caps? In the previous video, I talked about using const. Every time we use a constant, it's a really good idea to just, actually name the actual name of it in all caps. That way it's very easy to spot. Now, with our group created, we're going to come back down to spawn asteroid, or the spawn asteroid function, where we've just added the child to the entity container. We are now going to go and grab that new asteroid. We're going to use dot add to group, and we're going to pass in the asteroid group. And then we're going to go to the asteroid count array, and we're going to use dot append, and we want to append the new underscore asteroid, like so. So this is going to add the new array to our asteroid. It's going to add the new asteroid to the array. It's going to also add that new asteroid to a new group. So there'll be a new group that will just be called asteroid, and it will contain every single asteroid, the same as the array. Now these two are basically doing the same thing, so we technically could remove either the array or the asteroid if we really wanted to. We'll get into that and why there are benefits for doing either or in the future. For now, it's just a good thing to set up so we can kind of test it and mess around with it. So that is the entire function that we need for spawning our asteroids. Now you'll note that I said one of the things we need is a position. The position that this is going to spawn at is going to be at the 0, point, or the top left corner or top right corner. It's one of the corners. I think it might actually be the bottom right corner that I'm thinking about it. It will spawn it there every single time. Now that can actually be okay for now, and we'll get into random placement of asteroids as we kind of move forward. But for now, we don't need to specify a position because it's already got a predefined one. Now we have handled the spawning of our asteroid, we actually need to get it to fire somewhere. If we actually go and call the asteroid or spawn asteroid function inside of process, every single time it processes, it's going to do this check and then it's going to try and spit out a new asteroid. We don't actually want that. We're going to want a little bit more control over the time between spawning new asteroids, or when it should spawn new asteroids, or when at least it should check if it should spawn new asteroids. So to do that, we're going to come to the asteroid spawn timer here. We're going to go under node, signals. We're going to connect it to the timeout function. Now, the signal here for timeout is fired every single time the timer hits 0. So every time it counts down to 0, it will time out or fire the timeout signal, and then it will run this function. So we actually want it to run spawn asteroid inside of this function. That means the asteroid will constantly, at this moment, 1 second, try to spawn a new asteroid. So let's go and change the wait time on this to 2 seconds. We'll make the timer here auto start, and that's it. This will now do its job, right? This will now do everything that it should do. We can now throw this in the main and just let it run. Before we actually do that, we have one small issue. Can spawn asteroid will forever be true. And if it's always true, it means this will always try to spit out a new asteroid. That can get pretty demanding. So above the function that we created for our timer, and below spawn asteroid, we're going to create a new function. This new function will be for func set underscore asteroid underscore spawnable there we go, of type void with no extra parameters, and we are going to just do a really simple count. We're going to go if, or an if check. We're going to go if the asteroid count dot size is greater than or equal to, like so, the maximum spawnable large asteroids, can spawn asteroids is equal to false. So that will basically say, hey, if there are more or equal amounts of asteroids inside of our array and the maximum spawnable large asteroid, or as the maximum spawnable large asteroid count that we have here, we don't want to be able to spawn any more asteroids. And then we can just do a really simple else statement and just go else can spawn asteroids is equal to true. And that's it. So now where do we get this to go? Well, we can throw this inside of the actual process function. So let's go and do that right now. Let's go set underscore asteroid spawnable. And finally get the function firing for spawn asteroid once, just to make sure it works, inside of the ready function. Now let's hit Control S and save. And that should be our entire spawn manager laid out very neatly, very nicely, so we can kind of expand upon this when we want to add more things. Now, let's actually go and show this off to make sure it functions, right? That's always a really good thing to do, is make sure it works. To do this, we're going to go into the main scene here. Go to add a new child node of type node2d. Go to pull this just above the entity container. We'll call this the manager or managers underscore container, like so. And now we'll use Control Shift A or Command Shift A, and we'll add the entity spawn manager into here. So as you can see, we have the maximum spawnable large asteroids, which is set to 2, which means I can go delete the original one that's in here. And we need to actually set up our packed scene for our large asteroid again. So let's go do that. Quick load, go to scenes, asteroids, large asteroid. So we now have our large asteroid. We now have the maximum spawnable large set to 2. Let's go and click play and see if we run into a very funny issue. Oh, it's definitely spawning the asteroids. But as you can see, they're moving extremely quickly. And they are moving extremely quickly, and that is because when we create the large asteroid in this originally, what we didn't do is go and change the speed of the actual scene itself, right? We changed the move speed in the main scene, but we didn't change it under the actual scene for this large asteroid. So let's go and change that back to 3. Hit Control S and save, and hit play. We've got 1 asteroid. We got 2 asteroids. That's it. We should forever have 2 asteroids. Now, every time I hit play, these asteroids will go in different directions and they will spawn at different places, which is, kind of what we want to go for, right? We now have 2 asteroids spawning. We could come back and bump it up to 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's go to not 65. Let's go to 6 and see how that works. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we now have all of the asteroids spawning at all times. It's perfect. And as you can see, it's only ever going to spawn 1 asteroid every single time the timer ticks through. And that's because we kind of want it that way. We don't want it to spawn all 6 asteroids all at once. That could get a bit risky. But for now, that is pretty much all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, there is a link to a Discord in the description. So please come by, check it out, come talk with us. I hope you're having a great day and a great game dev journey, and I will see you in the next video.